I had to learn when my lower brain would always go automatically, right? There was like a super highway of tax season is stressful, tax season is stressful. It was just automatic. I had to be like, wait a minute, that's my lower brain doing what it does. Now I have to decide on purpose. I don't believe that anymore. Tax season doesn't have to be stressful.
Hello, Don Goldberg. How are you
Good,
today?
Harry. I'm great. How are you?
I'm fantastic, and I know I mentioned this before, but I have so much anticipation for this conversation.
Great.
So before we get there, before we get to talk about all the good things going on in brains,
Mm, especially the accountant brains.
yes, give us the short synopsis of who you are and why people want to listen.
Sure. So my name is Dawn Goldberg. I've been a CPA in public accounting for now over 30 years. I have worked for Deloitte Touche. I have worked for Ernst Young. I studied about, I'm going to say about 10 years ago, I studied to become a professional certified coach. And I am a coach for accountants. And I wrote the book, The Smarter Accountant, because everything that I learned and was applying in my own career and my life was life changing. And I had started coaching accountant moms under the umbrella of the company CPA Moms. And what I realized was the results that these accountant moms were getting. I realized that more accountants, like I couldn't just only work with accountant moms. I wanted to make this available, this information and what I teach and what I coach on. I wanted to make it available to all accountants. And so that's why I wrote the book, The Smarter Accountant.
All right, great opening. The Smarter Accountant. I've looked at some of the things that you do, and the one thing that that I think resonates the most with me, however, I'm not an accountant, is the neuroscience of what you're doing. And what there's a fellow who wrote the book The Pitch, and I'm blanking on his name. I don't know why. Anyway, his whole premise is that when you go in and you make these presentations for financing and multi-hundred-million-dollar deals, you still have to get past this croc brain, right? And if you can't get past the croc brain, it doesn't matter what kind of logic you use. It doesn't matter what kind of persuasive language you use or how fancy your pitch deck is, because you have to get past that croc brain.
Right.
And I have a feeling that that's a similar concept for you and speaking about accountants.
Yeah. So what I teach accountants, nobody's teaching in any accounting course or CPE seminar or CPA exam prep course. I'm teaching them about their brain, and that unfortunately, and it's no insult to accountants, but unfortunately, we're all underutilizing our brain. And we don't understand how we are underutilizing it, how it's showing up, how it's affecting us, and then how we can start to utilize it. So we have to completely simplify it, we have two major parts of our brain. We've got the lower, he said the croc brain, I like to call it the primitive brain. We've got this lower primitive brain that's been with us since humans lived in caves. And that lower part of the brain, its job is to keep us alive, and its job is to keep us safe. And it's motivated by three things, which is to seek pleasure, to avoid pain, and to be as efficient as possible and expend as little energy as possible. So that's the lower brain. That part of our brain is running our lives 80 to 90% of the time. So then you've got the prefrontal cortex, which is the higher part of the brain, and that is only present in humans. And the amazing thing about the prefrontal cortex is that it gives us the ability to think about what we think about, right? We can actually think about the thoughts that we're thinking about. So why does that matter? Because that gives you all the power to manage that lower brain. The prefrontal cortex has the ability to see the bigger picture. It is not about immediate gratification. It's about looking at the big picture, understanding delayed gratification. I like to equate it to the lower brain is like a toddler. It wants what it wants when it wants it. If everybody has children, you understand that. And then the higher brain is like the supervising mother or supervising father. And once you understand what is happening when you're just allowing that lower brain to run your accounting career and run your life, when you see what's happening, then you can understand how to then utilize the higher part of your brain to get the results that you want, to feel how you want to feel, to take the actions you want to take to get the results that you want to take. So that is just a real simplified explanation of what I teach generally. And then there's a tool that I teach on how you can recognize what's happening with that lower brain and then what you can do with the higher brain.
Love it. I think a good analogy for that lower brain thing is how we train ourselves to do things. And then once we learn how to do it, we do it like almost unconsciously, right?
Yes.
If we learn how to drive a car, the process of learning how to drive a car takes a tremendous amount of brain energy.
Yes.
Because everything we do is foreign. There's so many rules that we have to do. It's like the information overload. But as we become more accomplished, then we can drive, we can listen to the radio, we can have conversations. It's like, all these things are going on. We're not even paying attention to the driving anymore.
Right. So that's a great analogy. So when you were learning this new skill and you needed all of your attention and all of your energy, that was your higher prefrontal cortex had to be on fire. It had to be like paying attention. You move the steering wheel this way, you push the pedal this way. Then after you've practiced it, there's neural pathways in your brain. Yes. There's like from this to this, there's in the beginning, a neural pathway is very thin and very fragile. And the way I teach my clients, it's as if you're traveling down a road that's got tons of brush all over it. It's like, doesn't have a well-worn path at all. You've got to take a machete, you've got to clear it. So every time you practice thinking a certain way, feeling a certain way, or acting a certain way, you're knocking down the brush and you're clearing the road. Then you keep traveling it over time. That neural pathway gets stronger and stronger, and it becomes like a super highway. And that's when you're driving the car and you're just like, you're not even thinking about it, right? Even like driving to work, you've done it so many times, you show up at work, you're like, I don't even remember the last 15 minutes. Like, exactly. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how, but I got here. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, it's like, okay, well, when you apply that to accounting, there are probably certain aspects of the job that you just do.
Yes.
You just do. You don't even think about it. And so you're talking about the ability of teaching accountants how to think about their job as opposed to just rotely doing the job. Is that right?
Teaching accountants how to have control over what they think, how they feel, what they get done, the actions that they take, and the results that they get. For example, here was the light bulb moment for me. What I teach is this tool called the model. And the model teaches that circumstances are neutral. They don't mean anything until our brain makes it mean something. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the circumstance of tax season. Now, every CPA who's in public accounting, every CPA would think tax season is stressful. They would think that's a fact. But that's not a fact. That's actually a thought. The fact is the date on the calendar. The fact is today is, for example, April 14th, and tomorrow is the tax deadline. And the fact is I've got 10 tax returns to get done. Those are the facts. Now, what happens, like we were talking about with this neural pathway, is that we have practiced the thought tax season is stressful so often that we believe it's a fact, but it's not. The only fact is the date on the calendar, or the amount of work we have to get done, or the things that we whatever is on our to-do list or on our calendar. So what happened for me was when I realized, wait a minute, I can't change the circumstance, right? Tomorrow is, let's say it's April 15th. I can't change circumstance, but I can change by using that higher brain. I can change the thought that I think about it. Now, if I think tax season is stressful, what is that going to create? The feeling it's going to create overwhelm. And when I'm overwhelmed, what do? I spin, I get busy, I can't make a plan, I can't figure out what to do next, I complain, right? There's all these things that I do and that I don't do when I'm overwhelmed. I'm not focused, I'm not as productive as I could be, and I don't get the result that I want. So now, by using the higher brain, same circumstance. Tomorrow is April 15th. Now I choose on purpose. How do I want to think about that? That will create a feeling that I actually want to feel, that will lead me to take the actions that I want to take to get the result that I want. That puts you 100% in the power position. So now I had to learn when my lower brain would always go automatically, right? There was like a super highway of tax season is stressful, tax season is stressful. It was just automatic. I had to be like, wait a minute, that's my lower brain doing what it does. Now I have to decide on purpose. I don't believe that anymore. Tax season doesn't have to be stressful. I would just keep practicing that and practicing that. So I was creating a new neural pathway. And over time, now I've eliminated stress and overwhelm during tax season because I have rewired my brain.
Yes. Are you familiar with Bruce Lipton?
Yeah.
Okay, Biology of Belief.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
that's his entire premise, is that is like, well, your brain doesn't know good or bad.
Yeah, you're programming it. Yep.
You're literally programming your brain, and it's like, it's like, well, it's an environmental thing. So it's like, well, if you teach your brain that this environment is bad, then it's going to believe that this is bad.
Well, think about it. A baby doesn't think tax season is hard, right? Baby has no
Not that
clue.
I'm aware of.
Like, there's no baby that's like, oh my God, tax season is so hard, right? We are taught how to think about certain things. We are taught as a profession to think, and we look for all the proof. The thing in our brains is called the reticular activating system. And it's the part of our brain that filters out everything. We've got millions and trillions and bits of data every single day. Our brain cannot possibly process all that. So what it does is it has this filter that filters out everything else. For example, if you're in the market for a car, let's say you've narrowed it down to you want a Toyota Camry and you're looking possibly at like the color red, let's say. And then all of a sudden you're driving down the road and you notice all of these red Camrys. You're like, where did they come from? I have never seen so many red Camrys, because your brain has filtered everything else out. And it's like, oh, we think that this is important. Now we're going to show it to you.
Yes.
Now we're going to see it.
Yes. It's
the same thing with when we're starting to learn certain things, right? We get into the profession and we're new accountants and we just want to, prove ourselves, and we're unsure and we're not confident, and we hear what other people say and we don't want to be, ostracized because we want to be accepted into the tribe. And so we're taught what to believe, and everybody agrees. And like these two CPAs walking down the hallway, oh, Joe's car wasn't in the driveway, so therefore Joe must not be a very good accountant. They make this assumption. And so we as a tribe begin to agree with each other, and our brain looks for proof of that. And so I decided that wasn't working for me. And I'll tell you what, as soon as I eliminated stress and overwhelm during tax season, I get more done than anyone else, and I work the least amount of hours.
Well, okay, that was going to be my question, is like, okay, so if you're able to change your belief about the date, right? Mm-hmm. You're able to say, well, okay, I no longer associate stress and overwhelm with this date.
Well, no, task. It's not that I don't, it's that I've changed what I think about the time of year. I changed what I think about deadlines. I've changed what I think about the facts. The facts are the facts. I've changed what I think about them, which then creates a new feeling.
Right. It creates a biological change
Yes,
for you.
totally.
And what you're saying is that because you have this new belief, you have this new biological system that's working,
hmm
you're able to shorten the time frame because you're not spinning your wheels.
Yeah, because if you think about every single accountant, if they truly thought about and spent a little time thinking about what they do and don't do when they feel overwhelmed. So the way I look at it and the way I teach is that our feelings fuel our actions. And it's as if with stress and overwhelm, it's as if you're putting the dirtiest gas that you possibly can into the engine of a very expensive car. Now, will the engine seize right away? Of course not. But if you keep putting that dirty fuel in, over time, it's going to, AKA burnout in the accounting profession. We are fueling ourselves and normalizing the feeling of stress and overwhelm because of what we're thinking. It's the thoughts that our lower brain is offering us that we've practiced so many times. It's like driving the car, we just practiced it. Those thoughts are what's creating our feelings of stress and overwhelm. And those feelings of stress and overwhelm fuel our actions. And you would not believe how much time you waste when you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed.
Yes, I would.
It is the dirtiest fuel you could possibly use. And it is what all accountants use. This is the fuel they use.
Okay. So
yeah.
so let's take one of your clients. They get the new lesson plan. They start incorporating this new belief system, and yet they're still going over there and they're working with the accounts that have the old belief system. How do they combat that? That I have this belief, right?
Yeah.
I no longer wear a green jacket. I wear a red jacket.
Yeah.
Am I still part of the club?
So what they realize is that it was a very dysfunctional club to be a part of. Right? They realize, wait a minute, I'm part of a club that is leading me to be miserable. I feel unhappy. I am, drinking too much when I'm home because I'm so miserable when I'm at work. I am not a family. I am stressed out all the time. I'm bringing that home. They realize like what I've been doing isn't working. So now I'm willing to try something different. So here's what happened to me in my office. I didn't say anything to anyone. And I started applying what I teach, and I wasn't stressed and overwhelmed. And my boss was not used to that. He wanted me to get stressed and overwhelmed. So he'd be all worked up and he'd be like, blah, 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 and this. And I would just, okay, all right. And then he'd be like, but don't you understand? And I'm like, I hear you. I really do. And I was just really, he couldn't, I was no longer believing the thoughts that he believed.
Right.
That's what in the past, I was agreeing with him like, oh my God, yes. Oh my, yeah, I can't believe they did that. Oh my gosh. I was now in control. He was looking at a situation and I was looking at a situation, the same exact situation. He had these thoughts, it was creating stress and overwhelm. And I had thoughts that were not creating stress and overwhelm. And then he started to be like, wait a minute, like what is different? Like what's going on? And I explained to him, I've learned how to manage my brain. Now, whether he did or not is none of my business, but I have. And so what he eventually saw was how much more I got done, how much better I felt, and how much different I showed up when I didn't buy into what everybody else in the office was thinking and feeling and doing.
Now, your clients, are they self-employed, like accounting firm owners, or are they corporate, like auditors and big four accountants?
All the gamut, all different.
Okay.
Some in public accounting, some in private accounting, some are solopreneurs. I just worked with a partner in an accounting firm down in Miami. Yeah, I've run all the gamut.
Okay. Do you find a difference between the type of job that they do? Is that, like a corporate accountant, they have one set of beliefs because of, the nature of their business, where they're surrounded by other accountants and doing things, versus a guy that's working in a small office? Uh-oh, your sound, we
Unique.
just lost your sound.
Oh,
Oh, there it is.
you there? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Every single accountant brain is unique. And it doesn't matter whether in public accounting, private accounting, whether they're the boss, whether they're an employee, whether they're just studying for the CPA exam. I think that we just have programming and we have thoughts and beliefs that get indoctrinated and create those neural pathways in our brains that we have to start. I say it's like this big ball of yarn that we have to kind of unwind a little bit. We have to like pull the string and start to like challenge. So are there commonalities? I mean, public accountants, I would say there's the commonality of deadlines like tax season. Mm-hmm. So there's that, but there's across the board very varying beliefs about different similar circumstances. And that's what I teach them, is that the circumstance is neutral. It doesn't mean anything until your brain makes it mean something. So let's figure out what your brain makes it mean, not what, the partner, your other partners think it means. I want you to understand what your brain is making it mean, because what you think about, you then create a result. So I want you to get the best result for you, and let other people think, whatever they're going to think.
You said, I think earlier, that you came across this about 10 years ago.
10 years, yeah.
And from my understanding, and I could be wrong about this, but the whole science of understanding this has only been around maybe 20 years, roughly.
Okay.
And it's like before that we had these guys and mystics like must be late afternoon. I'm blanking on another name.
Okay. Like Orrin a Nostradamus.
Orrin Clapp was the pitch anything guy. He wrote that book. But no, we had the people who, Neville Goddard. Okay, we had these guys, and they were not mainstream. Okay, yes. They were over in a class of mysticism and mysterious woo-woo kind of thought processes, right? They were not mainstream.
Yeah.
And the Joseph Murphys of the world, we had all of these guys.
Yeah.
And what we have found out through neuroscience as the technology has caught up is that everything that they were saying was not clouded in some kind of mysterious woo-woo that we didn't understand. Right. It was science. It was actual fact that you could change your thought process by telling your brain what to actually think.
Yeah, we've only just now understood neuroplasticity. That wasn't even a word in our vernacular.
Yes.
Until science caught up with the thing that these teachers taught so many years ago in their own way. Like the Neville Goddard, I think he was wrapped up in more spiritual world, and maybe I'm thinking of somebody else, but yeah, they were kind of poo-pooed and dismissed, and now science is catching up and being like, yeah, no, we've proven that.
Yes. Are you familiar with Shad Helmstetter? He wrote a book in the 80s, I believe it was. It was What You Say to Yourself When You Talk to Yourself. I may be paraphrasing that, but the idea is that you are talking to yourself on a constant basis, 7,000, 10,000 messages a day,
60,000 thoughts a day you have.
There you go.
60,000.
And most of them are negative.
Yes, we're negatively biased. Our brains are negatively biased. Yes.
And so okay, that was his first book, right?
Yeah.
And then along comes science, neuroscience, the ability to actually see what the brain is thinking, when it's thinking, how it's firing, and the actual creation of those neural networks. And he wrote a new book, and it was called Neuroplasticity. Right? And he's like, I have been vindicated by science.
Right? Hallelujah.
And it's like, it's like, okay, it's like, okay, well, we have these thought processes. Whether we're accountants or marketers, it doesn't matter. We have these thought processes.
Yeah.
We're good, we're bad, but the good and the bad are not real.
No.
They're only programming that we input.
Well, and think about it, right? Like our especially in our childhood, we're taught what to think and believe. Yes. We're taught by very well-meaning parents and our teachers and our peers. We come with a blank slate, and then we've got everybody writing on it. Here's good, girls do this, boys do this. This is what you're supposed to do.
This is good behavior. This is bad behavior.
This is what's expected. This is right. And then we're just like, oh, okay. This is why I wind up not even, it's really across the board, but mostly with women. I wind up coaching them on people pleasing because they are it's so ingrained in them that you are there to make other people happy. And so they have a very hard time saying no and setting boundaries.
Yes, we're coming up on the season of Thanksgiving right here, right?
Yeah.
And the traditional order, speaking of people pleasing, is that, okay, the females do all the cooking.
Yes.
The males do all the eating and the watching of the football.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But that is, there's no law that says that's the way it has to be.
Right.
Right.
But it's tradition, right? So
yes.
So there was an analogy. I shared this a while ago, and there was an analogy, a story that this family was in the kitchen, and the great granddaughter said to her grandmother, "Why do we cut the legs off the turkey before we put it into the pan?" And she's like, "Well, she said to her mother, well, that's just the way my mother always did it." So mother said to her mother, "Why do we cut the legs off of the turkey before we put it in the pan?" So she says, "Well, my mother always did that way." So then they finally get to the great grandmother, and she's like, "Oh, the pan was too small."
Yes.
Right. So we're doing the same thing the way we've always been taught. We don't realize where it originated from or why.
Yes. And we do that in marketing.
Yep.
We do that in accounting, I'm sure.
Yep.
Like, well, why do we do it this way? Well, that's the way it's always been done.
Yes. Well, there's a term in accounting. It's called SALY, SALY, same as last year. And so when you're going through the financials of a company and you're trying to tie things out, there's certain accounts that you don't need to analyze. You're just like, oh, same as last year. But we do that in our lives. We do that so much, like, oh, same as last year, because we're thinking the same thing. We're doing the same thing. And then we're wondering why we're getting the same result that we're miserable with.
Yeah. Yeah. I am absolutely fascinated by this topic, right? I love it.
Yeah.
I got a stack of books that are just about this topic. Now, the issue is, and I'm sure you have your coaching students are the same way. It's having the knowledge, and it's the application of the knowledge.
That's it. That's exactly what I teach with the tool that I use, the model. So this is not just the theory of it. It's not just like, oh, that sounds so interesting. Wow, that's really cool. It's putting it into practice.
Yes.
And so I have my clients do what's called a thought download, where they, for 15 minutes each morning, they dump their brain onto paper. They dump some of those 60,000 thoughts, they put it onto paper. And then they do what's called an unintentional model, which is, what is your lower brain? What does it think? They pick one thought, and then they put it into the model. And then they say, okay, this is what I would because I'm thinking this is how I feel. This is what I do and I don't do. And here's my result. Now, do I like my result? If I don't, what would I choose to on purpose intentionally think? That is putting it into practice. Then you begin to see how much control. We don't have control over circumstances, most circumstances. There are things that just are what they are, but we have 100% control over what we think about those circumstances, that then creates our feelings, that then drives our actions and our reactions and our inactions, and then eventually creates our results. So we have so much power that we don't realize that we have.
We do. And it goes back to, look, I'm 60, right? And I didn't start on this path until I was in my 50s.
Me too. Yeah.
Right. So here I am. I have at least 55 years of programming of all these negative thoughts and all these people putting stuff in my brain and me allowing it to be put in my brain.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, well, Bruce, I love you, but just making the decision doesn't change how I think about it.
Right. But because here's what you have to do. You have to practice. First, you have to have the first step is awareness.
Yeah.
You have to notice, oh, I'm thinking tax season is stressful, right? You have to notice it. You have to create the awareness of it. Then you have to choose the new thought. When I think this, we don't think that anymore. I think this. So you have to have the awareness and then you practice that thought. And you just have to keep practicing. So what happens with that neural pathway, you've got the neural pathway in your brain that's really that super highway of tax season is stressful, right? That super highway.
Yep.
This new thought, it doesn't have to be stressful, or tax season isn't stressful. Whatever thought is believable, right? You want to practice that one. That's like a little thin little thread when you first thought. Little baby. It's like a baby thread. So if you keep practicing this, what happens to this strong neural pathway is it gets weaker and weaker and weaker because you stop traveling that road. And then that gets overgrown with the brush. And now this one becomes the super highway. So it's first the awareness, and then it's the higher brain making the choice, right? The higher brain can deciding on purpose. When this thought comes up, and it will, because like you said, you had 50 years of thinking this way. When it comes up and I notice it, then I say, nope, we're thinking this instead. And then just notice it, think this, notice it, think that.
And those negative thoughts is like, they're so frequent and they're so, what's the word? They're just, you don't even think about them. They're just there. Yes. And so as you start becoming aware of these thoughts.
Yeah. It's a little shocking.
Then you go, holy crap, why am I thinking this?
Yes. Well, that's interesting you say that, because I say to my clients, like, initially you're going to be like, what in the world is happening? Like now you have the awareness. It's like you are shining a light into like corners that you didn't realize were there, into like the back of the attic. You're like, whoa. You want to come from a place of non-judgment. I always say it's like a judgment-free zone. We don't want to judge what we notice, because then it's like it's like an animal that just wants to hide. Then it's like whack-a-mole, right? The thing pops up and we're like, no, and it pops up and you're like, no, you can't think that. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm thinking that. You want to be like, oh, and you want to come from a place of curiosity. You want to be open and willing to take a look at it, because then with the awareness, now you can do something about it. Without the awareness, it's just happening automatically.
So let's talk about this process. How long does it take for your clients to go from, I have no idea what you're talking about, to having some success in changing their behaviors and their thoughts regarding those behaviors?
I mean, I could literally change someone in one session, but I have a 6-week package where we meet one-on-one for 6 weeks. And the first few weeks I teach them the tool that I teach. And then there's 12 pain points. There's 12 issues in my book. And what I have my clients do is pick 3 out of the 12. And then we go deeper weeks 3, 4, and 5 with each of those, because they want to hone in on one of those, on 3 of those, 3 out of the 12. So by the end of the 6 weeks, they have an awareness that they're like, are you kidding me? Like, they now understand what's been happening with their brain. They now understand, not only do they have the awareness, but they do see how much control they have. And so then it's afterwards that you have to continue the practice. But yeah, within 6 weeks, they completely understand what's been happening, why they've been feeling the way they've been feeling, why they've been, doing certain behaviors, and why they have the results they have.
So here's the big question, Dawn.
Tell me.
How much does it change in their success? Do they work less? They have more family time? Do they make more income? Do they get raises? They get promotions?
Depends on what they want. It depends on, some of them just want the awareness. I've had people that have left, their job and gotten a new job. I've had people that have just wanted to do better in their job. They wanted to be a better leader. I've had people that have improved their relationship, people that have made more money, they're working less hours, they're getting more done in less time. They're better managing their time, they're happier. It really depends on what it is that they want to focus on.
Yeah, you and I are geeking out on the neuroscience of this, but really it's a transformation is what you're offering.
Totally. That's why I said my clients will say to me, this is life-changing. And I said, yes, that's why more accountants need to know this.
Well, I would agree.
You and me both.
I mean, every time I pick up a book from one of these fellows, it's like, it's a head shaker, right?
Yes.
It's like
the whole profession. I mean, I'll never forget. It was, I guess it was last year, and it's a very popular publication, Accounting Today. Every accountant reads Accounting Today. And they said, brace yourself for another horrible tax season. And I was like, are you kidding me? Here we go, perpetuating. And then everybody's like, oh, yep. And, we're all in this together. Brace yourself for another. I forgot what that title was, but it was something along those lines. And I was like, why?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Well, okay. Two things have happened in the last year. Two things that I think, maybe you agree with this or not, but here's what I think is that the first was, and they were almost about the same time. So let's go with the first. The first is the IRS is hiring 80,000 new agents. All right. So everybody who pays taxes and has a small business is thinking, oh my God, what are they doing? Right? Fear.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
All right. The second thing that happened is Congress went out and said, well, look, any transaction over $600, we want to know about. And so all the crypto boys are saying, every transaction, well, I do 40 a day, right? Every day trader, every crypto trader, every silver bug, I'm buying and selling silver. A lot of transactions over $600. I now have to know every single one of these things,
right,
and report on these. Like, holy cow! And so, if I'm an accountant, if I'm a bookkeeper, I'm thinking, wow, that's going to be a lot of work. Now, personally, I think they should be thinking something different.
Well, that's an optional thought. Yeah. Yeah. If you have the thought, oh my gosh, that sounds like a lot of work. What feeling does that create?
Stress and overwhelm.
There you go. And then what do you do? What are the actions that are fueled by stress?
This is what you do. You go,
yeah,
where do I start?
You don't get things done.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yes, there are, here's the analogy that I use with my clients. Imagine you walk into the largest walk-in closet. It's almost like a department store. It's all yours, right? This big, giant walk-in closet. And every single hanger has something hung on it. And it's a thought or a feeling. And you get to pick any one and put it on. You get to choose that thought. Let's try it on. You get to choose that feeling. Let's try it on. So what I'll tell my clients is what I encourage them to put their top 3 feelings that they need to feel in order to get work done. I tell them to put it on a Post-it underneath their computer screen. And so as we work together for those 6 weeks, they start to notice, oh, when I feel focused, obviously I get more done. When I feel determined, when I feel motivated, whatever it is. So I tell them, put that on like a sweater. Like today, when I go to work, I'm going to choose the feeling of focused. Okay, I'm going to put that sweater on and focus. Well, how do I create the feeling of focus? You create it by choosing a thought that creates a feeling of focused. So when you notice yourself getting distracted, when you notice yourself getting, oh my God, I can't believe the IRS changed this rule or this change or whatever, go back to what is it that I need to feel in order to get my work done? And what do I need to think? Because our thoughts create our feelings, circumstances don't. We're not feeling stressed because of a law that was passed. We're not feeling stressed because there's some announcement. We're feeling stressed because our brain is thinking something about that circumstance. That's where we have control. We can take, oh, okay, here's an optional thought. Let me try that one on. Oh, that feels better. Let me do that. That'll actually get me to do things and get me to take action that gets work done.
You know, my partner is an actress, and we've had these conversations. You know, her favorite actor in the world is Daniel Day-Lewis. And the reason that she likes him so much is because when he gets a role, he goes so deep into the role that he becomes that person.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a lot about what you're saying, and is like, well, you get to put on that persona.
Yes.
That is like, okay, so what does a guy who doesn't have that stress and overwhelm, what do they act like? Right? How do they react? How do they think about things? And that's what, it's like, okay, if we're going to train our brains, we're going to train our ability to not be emotionally reactive to facts, then that's what we have to be doing.
Well, here's the thing though, and this is why my clients, like working one-on-one with me, is that the thought has to be believable. You can't go from I hate my job to I love my job. It's too far of a leap.
I agree.
It's called cognitive dissonance.
Yes.
Too far of a gap.
Yes.
You have to, and I work with my clients on this. It's either we call it bridge thoughts or we call it ladder thoughts. So bridge thought, you're here, you want to get over here. What's the first believable thought that feels 10% better than what you're currently thinking? If this one all the way over here is believable, if you could get there pretty easily, great. But if you can't, just 10% better. That'll gradually get you. You can't just
as you build up that neural network.
Right. You gradually get like until once this better feeling thought is just automatic.
But you're describing the failure and the break point of the law of attraction. Right? Everybody says, well, just think it and it'll be real. Well, you're thinking things that your brain just your subconscious
it's too big.
It's like you're saying it, but that ain't true.
Yeah. Right. Well, I do believe in setting impossible goals, right? I set the goal, never wrote a book. My 11th grade teacher said, good thing you chose accounting because you're horrible at English.
Great.
I wrote and published my book within 363 days. I set a goal for 365. It was going to be an impossible goal because I had my accounting career, my coaching business, all the things. I've got tons and tons of things. And I was like, no, I'm going to do it. And by July 31st of 2022, I will have my book delivered to my mailbox via Amazon. And 2 days prior, I had the book. So I do believe in believing in the impossible, but then working your way to creating that thing.
Well, you have to take the action steps. You can't
exactly. You can't just think it and feel it. Right. The thinking and the feeling is key because it drives the actions.
Yeah.
You can't just sit and expect a Ferrari to show up in your driveway. You have to think and feel a certain way to take actions to then possibly get that. Yeah.
Yeah. You're also describing how most people think about word of mouth marketing.
Okay.
I do word of mouth marketing,
Okay.
but they don't do anything.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, it's like, well, I provide
Yeah.
good customer service, so
Yeah.
naturally they're going to go out and talk about it. It's like, okay, you listen, you went to a great restaurant yesterday. How long are you going to talk about that?
Right.
2 days, 3 days?
Right. No,
But
you've got it. Yeah.
yeah. So it's like you have to do something to help people remember. You have to do something to ask them to do something for you. And there's a process, there's a strategy there.
Yeah.
But most people don't go that extra step to actually create a strategy. And they probably don't do the same thing with their brain. They don't. It's like, okay, well, I've heard of law of attraction,
Yeah.
but they don't take the next step in thinking, well, I actually have to do something in
Yeah.
order to affect that change.
Well, the actions, right, create our results. So if you're not taking action, it's because of a feeling.
Yeah.
So you have to say, okay, what am I feeling that's driving this inaction? And what do I need to feel in order to take action to then get the result that I want? If you're just neutral or you're not determined or motivated, then it's going to show up in your
Right.
actions. It always will.
You're why is your brain making you procrastinate?
Oh, yeah, that's huge. That is huge. The action of procrastination is something that one of my specialties is time management. And one of the things that we work on, in depth is procrastination is inaction. What is happening? What is the feeling that's preceding the procrastination? And it's typically overwhelm.
Yeah.
It's typically overwhelm or fear, right? There's something that whatever it is, they're afraid of. So they have fear, but it's based on what they're thinking. I don't want people to judge me. I don't want this to whatever it is. Then you feel fearful and then you don't do the thing that you need to do.
And all that goes back to the programming, right?
Yes.
Like, why do you care what other people think? Well, because
Yes.
we've been programmed to think that.
Yes. Well, think about it this way. Our lower brain is programmed to seek out the community. If we were ostracized from the tribe, we died. We needed to be part of, when we lived in caves, we needed to be part of a tribe.
Mhm.
And so when we do something different, or when we might put ourselves out there and, be vulnerable, then that lower brain kicks in, and it equates putting a social media post out as a saber-toothed tiger is gonna jump on you. It's like, that sounds terrible. You're gonna die. Like, don't do that. Right?
Yeah, I'm laughing because that hits me in the feels.
Yeah. Yeah. When you understand what your lower brain is doing, you have the awareness. You're like, oh, it's only doing this because it thinks there's danger. And in our modern world, we have the same primitive brain that we did when we lived in caves. And now imagine that brain in 2022 is like, what is happening?
Yep.
There's Slack, there's social media, there's emails, there's computers. It's like danger everywhere. So it's like,
or it's shutting it down. It's like there's too
yes,
much.
right, just to protect itself.
Yeah.
So if you want to do something, you want to set a goal, you want to create something, you want to change something in your life, you've got to understand what is happening with your lower brain, and then what you can do with your higher brain, the power that you have with your higher brain.
That's funny you say that, because I like to please, right? And so I don't want to be confrontation, right? Because confrontation just is like, oh, that's yucky. I don't want to be like that. However, I think, and I made a post today that's like that. It's like, well, I got to throw rocks at all these bad thoughts. that other people are having. Like, you guys all think you can do it yourself. Well, let me point out how A, B, C, D, and E you're not even thinking of, and these are the things that are affecting you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not even aware of what you don't even know.
Yes.
Right? It's
Yes.
like, well, I tried that and it didn't work. You didn't really try it.
Right.
You don't even know enough to try it
Right.
effectively. And so
Right.
it's like, I have to be confrontational because you guys are just, and I say you guys, I'm including all accountants, all bookkeepers as a group. Your marketing sucks.
Yeah. You have to be willing to shake things up. You have to be willing to be like, all right, you've been thinking this way and doing things this way, but how's that working for you?
Right.
And if it's not, then let me show you a new way.
Yeah.
And like I said before, we'll wrap it up to the beginning. Accountants, or maybe we said this earlier, accountants are notorious for arguing for their limitations, where they believe something a certain way, they've thought it for so long, they believe a certain way, and they don't like the result of it, but they don't want to change it because it's what's familiar.
Explain that limitation thinking again, because I think that was pre-call.
Okay. Yeah. So arguing for your limitations is, for example, I'll say to an accountant, tax season doesn't have to be so stressful. Like you can, excuse me, you can eliminate stress and overwhelm during tax season. Now they understand how horrible their life is when they're feeling stressed and overwhelmed. Like, they don't like what happens. They don't like working too many hours and how it affects them physiologically and relationally, with their partners and their kids and stuff like that. But they'll argue for the right to believe that tax season is stressful and overwhelming. And I'm like, that is arguing for your limitation. I can teach you how to get more done in less time. No, there's never enough time. No, but I can teach you how to get more done in less time. No.
Every time you say that, I laugh because it's very humorous, but it's very serious, right?
It is, yeah.
But it's like the silliness of arguing something that's factual. Like, wait a sec. No, yes, you can change that.
Yes.
No, I can't.
Right. It's like I'm challenging their religion, right? They believe this so strongly.
I do not like broccoli. You can't change my mind about that.
Right. They believe in it so strongly, but they're like, but it's like, what is the result that belief is getting you? And they're like, well, no, there's just not they have very tunnel vision.
Yeah.
Right. Because, and the other thing with accountants is that we are trained to look for problems. We are problem solvers. So when we're trained to look for problems, what does our brain find? A lot of problems.
Right.
And when we equate our value with problems, we tend to not want to give up the problems.
Okay, that's a real issue though.
Yeah.
Right? If you have gone through your college process and your early career, and all you do is think about problems and finding problems, your job is to find those problems. You find comfort in the existence of those problems.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So you have to train yourself to find comfort outside of that emotional state of a problem being comfortable.
Right. And what I like to say is, what I'll teach my clients is that it's not a problem until your brain has a thought about it. Right. So the date on the calendar is not a problem until your brain has a thought about that circumstance.
Sure.
The only problems that we have are thought problems.
Oh, we have lots of those.
There are things in the world that happen, right? I'm in a car and there are other cars around me and we're not moving. That's a fact. This is traffic and it sucks. That's a thought, right?
Right.
So we have a thought about a situation, we have a thought about a circumstance. And so we are trained. We're also, I mean, I don't know that maybe it's just my experience, but I think accountants are often trained to complain as well,
I don't think
right?
that's
Like we find
exclusive.
comfort in our group of complainers.
Hey, listen, Dawn, I got a whole neighborhood of people who like to complain, and none of them are accountants.
Oh, I know the whole world likes to complain, but accountants?
All right, you ready for some special questions?
Yes, sure.
All right. What is something that most people think is important that I can just skip entirely?
What is something that most people think is important that I can skip entirely? I think because of the way our brain works, I think that we place way too much importance on what other people think. So I think you can't avoid the fact that if you're dealing with other humans, they're going to have opinions. So I think we need to give up trying to control other people's opinions or being affected by other people's opinions. People have thoughts about a lot of things, and everybody's brain is negatively biased. So it's a guarantee that people's opinions, no matter what you do, no matter how perfect you are or try to be, people are going to have opinions. So I just say like that's one thing you just have to let go of.
Boy, if we could affect that change,
Yeah.
so much would be different.
Well, you would go after so many things. If I could like literally take out the piece of your brain that cares what other people think, imagine what you would do. Imagine the goals you would go after. Right? Like think about what would be possible if you seriously could not care what other people think.
I think there's a whole new group of people who have kind of taken that on, right?
Yeah.
And you and I, we didn't grow up with the possibility of the internet, right?
Yeah.
And all of the things that the internet opens up,
Yeah.
experience-wise, career-wise, income opportunity. And so there's this whole group of people that grew up with the internet and making videos, being YouTubers since they were 13.
Mm-hmm.
And now they find themselves being millionaires because they've understood this technology in a way that you and I just didn't grow up with.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, but they had that thing that they just didn't care what other people thought because they loved this thing.
Yes.
And I see it over and over and over. With I'm going to say most of them are under 30.
Yeah.
And they're doing things just like, why? How is it possible that they're doing this thing?
Yeah. Because they were willing to do the thing that other people, again, our lower brain would have us not do.
Right.
They were willing to they were able to override that.
And really I think it comes from the fact that they had no preconceived notions. There was nothing to be preconceived about.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. What channels have led to the building of your highest quality relationships?
What channels?
Channels. Like, we're talking, types of communication channels, email, Twitter, Facebook, whatever.
What has led to
your highest quality relationships?
My highest quality relationships, I would have to say that I have a podcast. I do this for CPA moms. I have a podcast, and I have to say that podcasts by far have been the most incredible for me in my knowledge, but then being around in community, especially, virtually with other coaches, no matter what their niche is, that we speak the same language. I think that Zoom has been like the greatest platform ever, because not only do I get to coach my clients via Zoom, but I get to connect with people via Zoom. And I am a classic introvert. I would love to not be around people like 24/7. I get my energy from like not being around people, like little drips of people. So being able to honor my space and honor like not having my one of my bosses is a classic extrovert, so he literally, I equate it to him like plugging into me and like zapping all of my energy when I'm around him. He's so extroverted. So yeah, I hope that answered the question, but I would say that the community that I have been able to build of other coaches who speak the same language, who understand the same concepts that I do, has made me feel like I have my own tribe.
I love the answer. And I giggled because I feel like an introvert at most times as well. I just soon not go and be in a crowd, like a cocktail
Oh,
party, networking. That kind of stuff. That
yeah,
kind of stuff just really gives me the creeps, and it drains me. It's like you have to be
totally.
so on, and it's like, oh no. And I find it interesting that you said Zoom, because the one thing that came out of COVID that was a positive
Yes.
was the fact that everybody realized you could have good conversations via Zoom.
And that the accounting profession, the old timers, had to release their limiting beliefs about where people can get their work done. They had no option, right? We
Yes.
had to work virtually. And
Yes.
if you needed to talk to clients or you needed to talk to coworkers, you needed to use technology. So there they were forced. They had neural pathways that were like, nope, if people aren't sitting in seats in our physical area, then they're not doing their work. They had to to give that up. They
Right.
were forced to. And
Yep.
now you've got accounting firms are dying for to hire people. There's a huge shortage, and these old time accountants have to give up that idea, and they have to offer flexibility. They have to offer that
100%. I,
yeah.
I was I was speaking with a fella down in Australia, and he had no intention of being an accounting firm owner.
Mm.
Then his dad passed away,
Mm.
and he had to come in. He had to become an accountant. He had to run the firm. I mean, the whole family depended on him, and he
Yeah.
was the guy.
Yeah.
And he said that, once he embraced the role, he found out that the way that things had always been done were just awful,
Yeah.
right? They were just awful.
Yeah.
And so he went overseas to recruit talent and train them to do what he needed them to do, and
Yeah.
they just exploded,
See, you
right?
needed he didn't have the limiting beliefs that the
Now,
old timer did. Yeah.
exactly. I mean, he was a marketer.
Yeah.
He came in with a marketing mindset. Well, how can I become more efficient as an accounting firm owner?
Yeah.
And the result was that their entire staff, their accounting staff, is remote.
Yeah.
So it's like you don't have to be in the office,
No.
and overseas talent is really, really good,
Wow. Awesome.
right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay. And again, that's just one of those things I think that, you know, people did have to release some of their long held beliefs.
Oh yeah. Especially the accounting profession. Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Last one.
Okay.
What is something you believe 5 years ago that you had to unlearn to get where you are now?
A lot about the work that I do. Yeah, I think my biggest, what we talked about, that tax season is stressful. Like I literally had to untrain my brain to think that way. Even just calling it busy season. We tend to be addicted to being busy. And what I noticed, I had one of my clients do this. I had her keep a tally next to her, how many times she used the word busy or thought the word busy. And we use it as a badge of honor in the accounting profession. If we're not busy, like those accountants in the hallway saying, oh, his car wasn't in the driveway, there in the parking lot, therefore he's not good at what he does. We call it busy season. We get, I'm guilty of this. We get validation. Oh, I'm so busy. Oh, don't ask me to do anything. It's busy season, right? So I had to unlearn a lot of the limiting beliefs, the verb, like the way I was describing things, the way I was thinking of things. That has changed everything in how I do my work and how much I can get done. And by virtue of understanding how my brain works, I also learned, I think one of the greatest improvements over the last 5 years has been in my relationships. That I realized how many limiting thoughts I had, and how many thoughts that weren't creating the feeling that I wanted and weren't giving me the results that I wanted in all of my relationships, especially like with my husband and my kids. My kids are older now. My daughter's 30, my son is 27. So I had to learn a new way of being a mom to young adults, and just understanding, applying what I teach my clients. They've improved their relationships. I improved my relationship. So I see such a huge difference in my career, but also I would say the biggest difference in the last 5 years is in my relationships.
I think that's fascinating that the last thing you learned was how to apply it to yourself in your own relationships.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm like, oh, this works in that area. Let me try it in this. Oh, it works in that area. Let me try it in this.
All right. Fascinating, Dawn. All right. Tell us where people can find you, the best places, how to get your book, and who you serve.
Sure. So my website is thesmarteraccountant.com, the smarteraccountant.com. And my book is on Amazon. Same title, thesmarteraccountant.com. And I work with accountants who are looking to deal with all these different pain points that most accountants deal with. Working too many hours, having stress and overwhelm, being unhappy in their career, being on the verge of burnout, like all these, dealing with imposter syndrome. That's a huge one for accountants, having a lack of self-confidence and then dealing with imposter syndrome, and just every area of their career and their life can all be addressed when they understand how to manage their brain. And what I like to say to everybody is, when you learn how to manage your brain, you can manage everything else. That's the truth. And that's what I work with my clients on.
I think that could apply to so many people.
Well, I'll tell you what. So I had an editor who edited my book, and she was reading the first part of it, and she wrote back to me and she goes, "You do know this applies to every human being, right?" And I'm like, "I know, but let's just start with accountants." And she's like, "Listen, I see the smarter attorney, the smarter doctor, not just the smarter accountant, the smarter, engineer." And I'm like, let's first start with accountants.
A franchise coming soon.
Right? The smarter everybody.
Dawn, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate your participation.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.